Good afternoon and welcome to our press conference with regards to travel during a winter storm driving ban. I'm Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars, and I'm joined by our Commissioner of the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Dan Neverth, as well as the Deputy Commissioner and responsible for disaster response, Greg Butcher, and the Deputy Commissioner in response to our fire response from the Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Chris Coel. We're also joined by Sarah Bonk, who was Special Assistant to the department until recently, in which she has now taken on a position basically managing the emergency services aspect for our Department of Mental Health, which is an important thing that we sometimes forget about. But we're here to talk about what happens in a driving ban and who is authorized to drive in a driving ban. We've run into this situation, unfortunately, far too often in the last few years where we have a state of emergency in place and a driving ban is announced, and then people are still driving who are not emergency personnel. And as we saw last year during the November storm, but specifically in the blizzard, they were getting stuck on the road, and then they were blocking our ability to respond from our Department of Public Works as well as all other public works departments. I went back and I looked at the death listings associated with the blizzard, and there were 4 people who died that were found in their vehicles. There were 12 individuals who died in the city of Buffalo alone from lack of power, no oxygen. We couldn't get emergency response crews to them, and most of those deaths happened after the 23rd and the 24th because of the blockage of the roads. So the problem is magnified when you have vehicles on the roads that shouldn't be there, and then blocking the ability of public works and utility trucks to get down and try to fix what is down. So we think it's very important that the public understand that we can do only so much in government in a response, and we need the assistance from the public. And if the public is not going to assist us in allowing us to respond, it's going to hinder our operations and could cost lives. So just a little breakdown before I turn over to Dan to talk a little bit more about the policies. A state of emergency is what is required before a driving or travel ban can be issued. There can be no driving ban or travel ban unless a state of emergency has been issued. Who can issue a state of emergency? Well, under New York State Public Officers Law, Section 24, the Chief Executive Officer, which is a city or village mayor, a town supervisor, or the county executive, can issue a state of emergency and any subsequent emergency orders off of it. State of emergencies can vary. State of emergency can be for a snowstorm. State of emergency, of course, could be for COVID. State of emergencies can exist for other matters, such as a tornado comes in and damages an area, and we have to issue a state of emergency for that community. So as a result, the executive orders, the emergency orders, will vary based on what the state of emergency is. But it's important for people to understand that when we say there's a travel advisory, that means you can travel, but it's not recommended. A driving ban can be implemented, but only when a state of emergency has been issued. So it's important, and we're doing this training every time we have a new supervisor or a new mayor. They need to understand they cannot issue a driving ban until they issue a state of emergency. So the issuance of emergency orders is covered by New York State Public Officers Law, Section 24. And it says that once a state of emergency has been issued, the chief executive may promulgate local emergency orders to protect life and property and to bring the emergency situation under control. So emergency orders are not issued except in these situations here. It's to protect life and property and to bring the emergency situation under control. So here, when we have a snowstorm that requires a state of emergency, which could be like the November snowstorm, which was not a blizzard, but was a significant snowstorm that required a state of emergency to be issued, or the December blizzard. It's not the first blizzard we've had during my administration. We've actually had quite a few blizzards. I think 5 official blizzards since this administration took office as compared to the 3 that existed in the 50 years beforehand. But once a state of emergency has been issued, you can issue emergency orders to protect life and property or to bring the situation under control. The 2 primary reasons for issuing a travel or driving ban are simple: to protect life and bring the emergency under control by opening up the roads or restoring services as quickly as possible. As I noted, if there are vehicles on the road and the trucks cannot get down the road, either the plow to road or a utility truck to get down to the utility area, then we have problems. We're not able to restore electricity to a community as quickly as possible if they can't get down the road because there's blockage. And then the other thing is just opening up the roads, clearing of them snow. When we have cars abandoned on the road, as you've heard from us before, we don't go in there with our plows and push the cars away. We actually have to have them towed. Either what the city often does, which is a micro tow, move them over to the side so that they can get down the road, or what we do is just tow them to a site off in the distance so we can actually then get our plows down the roads. So 2 things is why we issue a travel ban. Protect life, bring the emergency under control by opening up roads and restoring services as quickly as possible. I know one of our stations is having a problem with their sound right now, but sorry about that. Issuance of a travel ban. New York state law specifically notes that as a potential emergency order, and I will read it, this is straight from the law, New York Public Officers Law, Section 24, 1A, notes that the establishment of a curfew and the prohibition and control of pedestrian and vehicular traffic except essential emergency vehicles and personnel. And this is the problem. When we issue a travel ban, we often have many people on the roads who are not responding to the emergency, who are not providing assistance in the emergency. They may be going to a family member's house. They may be from Joe's Pizza to make a pizza delivery. They may be any type of other business that is not essential in a snowstorm emergency. And we often hear that, oh, I was told I had to go into work because I'm essential. Well, New York law specifically states that in a travel ban, driving ban, the only people who can be on the road are essential emergency vehicles and personnel. It's the only exception. So if you're told by your employer, you're a barista at a coffee shop, I got to come in, no. The place shouldn't even be open. I guess it could be open if there was walk-in traffic and people could walk there, but probably shouldn't be. But should not be ordering you on the road. And furthermore, under New York state law, violation of a travel ban is a Class B misdemeanor in which you could be hit with a $500 fine. And people have had tickets written against them in recent snowstorms because of violating the law. So this all leads to the question, who are essential emergency personnel? Because we often get that, and our Department of Emergency Services and Homeland Security has worked with a lot of parties to figure out who are emergency personnel. You can bring that up here if you need to. Just take a moment here, and then I'll turn it over to Dan. No problem. It's like this is usually how it goes in a snowstorm. It's all kind of hit or miss. Sometimes. Yeah. So once again, I'm just going to backtrack one little thing. New York law specifically says that a chief executive officer, after issuing a state of emergency, can issue emergency orders. And the first one listed, they list a whole bunch of emergency orders. The first one listed is establishment of a curfew and the prohibition and control of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, except essential emergency vehicles and personnel. So it's pretty clear under New York law, if you're not essential, emergency vehicles, personnel essential to the response associated with the disaster, which in this situation would be a snowstorm, you shouldn't be on the road. You shouldn't be driving. And as I said, that leads to the question of who's essential emergency personnel. I'm going to turn it over to our Commissioner, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, Dan Neverth, Jr. They've been working on this for quite some time, working with their partners, including in the federal government, to come up with a comprehensive list of who's essential. And then we're also going to give some private employers an opportunity to submit requests depending on who they are. We're just Joe's Pizza, no. But if you are the financial data center for J.P. Morgan Chase and Amherst, and you need to have that trading floor open, well, we probably have to have that open in that situation there because of the impact it could have on worldwide commerce. So we want people to understand that we are going to offer some exceptions, but he's going to have to apply for it. The vast majority who know, utilities, public works, law enforcement, First responders, they're essential. They know it. We know it. They don't have to take any further steps. But for those who think they're essential, you're probably not, but you may give us a good enough reason to explain why you might need a person or two at your location. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan now.
All right. We want to thank the county executive for remaining a student of emergency management and an expert on Article 2B, and constantly reminding us of those particular things that we have to focus on, and pushing us to the culmination of today, which is to announce that we're going to be doing a portal to get a little bit of additional information from businesses out there, because we only know what we know. And there's a lot of businesses out there post-storms that we've had a lot of experience on that have information that we can use in our database, and we can connect with them a little bit better down the road. So that's the whole purpose behind this, is to pull information, to pull data, to be able to work with those companies maybe that are currently being missed as essential. Again, because there are a lot of businesses out there that we don't maybe necessarily know how critical they are, maybe to the defense industry or other types of industry where we have to keep that going. So that's essentially where we're going. So essential workers based on what we have from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, staff we've worked with New York State and others that, quite frankly, are watching to see how this whole thing evolves, because none of them have really wanted to take on the task of expanding the list or looking beyond that. And Erie County could be different than Monroe County and other counties too. So we hope that this is a project with the leadership of the county executive that we can actually maybe use as a template in other areas. But there's going to be some adjustments here and there with regards to that. And there are going to be companies that are going to find out, I'm sure you're essential, but you're not essential in the big picture of us trying to get the economy and everyone else up to full speed and restoring the area like we have to. So it's very clearly defined in the past with regards to essential employees. I mean, there's what we would like to consider in our department and other agencies as no-brainers. I mean, it's the public safety, it's the first response agencies that are out there that have to maintain that service as much as they can. And as we saw during the last year's the blizzard, there are certain services that at a certain point we have to pull them off of the road. And it's not even an environment that we can operate in as emergency services, because it's just so hazardous. But just that basic tier 1, as we're defining it here, those type of organizations such as hospitals that have to have that continuity of operations. They can't just dismiss all of their patients and cancel all of their critical surgeries. So that has never really had much of a wrinkle with regards to the day-to-day operations. So that we feel very confident with regards to that. It's as we go into the other tiers where we work with our partners, tier 2 in this particular case, we have a great working relationship with Wegmans and with Tops. And I think oftentimes it gets lost during these disasters as to what goes into that. So we're actually working with them before the snow flies, because what they want more than anything is to have pre-positioned resources so that once things open up, the customers will actually have items on the shelves that they can go and they can shop for. So we have to be able to work very closely with them. So you might not be a tier 1, you might be ranked and justified as a tier 2 based on the information that you're giving us. But there are groups out there already that understand that as things evolve, as they improve, as it goes from a blinding snowstorm to the snow has let up, now it's a matter of clearing it out and starting to open that up. As part of that recovery process, we have to be able to have those vital services up and running and ready to go, so that when the customers actually hit the roads, we get to that point. So there are non-government organizations that we want to be able to take a look at, and we want to be able to work with them, and also a group of county folks, so we can actually go through this list, and so we're not being arbitrary with regards to this. We're actually working with them to take a look at the list and vetting it and seeing if we can expand that. The points that I wanted to make is our goal is to actually keep that resiliency going and to get the economy and this area moving as quickly as possible. Well, you can stall that by maybe bringing too many people out on the roads prematurely. So we have to be able to take a look at this, and our overall approach here is going to be not the current on-off switch. You're off right now. Nobody should be on the road unless you're that tier, to maybe more of you know, an environment where we can actually start to dial it up, and we can slowly start to open up the process to other businesses that have to get that functionality going, if not just for their own continuity of operation and to make sure that they actually have a business that people are going to return to, but also to assist us in opening up the rest of the community. So events are not static, which we have realized and we have found, whether it's COVID or whether it happens to be a blizzard or some of the storms, or we need to also focus on this and look at this as being something more than just storm related. We look in our department as things being all hazard. We need to be able to focus on that because it could be something different. It could be civil unrest. It could be something totally different, such as an earthquake or flooding. And so the dynamics have to change, and we have to be able to adapt and adjust. And even that essential list that we talked about in the Tier 1 could change. How do we go about doing that? So this is just our attempt to find more information from the non-traditional folks that would be in that Tier 1, see if we can make those adjustments and push this program forward as quickly as we possibly can. Now, you know, we've heard the terminology garbage in, garbage out. Our hope is that this survey will give us the information that we need to be able to make solid decisions working with all of our partners, not only internally but externally, and that we will be able to have that updated. So the expectation would be not only are we gathering information and contacts and being able to push proactively information maybe that a storm is coming and what our intentions are, but also we want to be able to make sure that that list is updated, because you know, bad information, outdated information is not going to benefit us. And this is going to be a program that'll be successful maybe for a short period of time, and then it's going to fall apart. So we, as part of this, we'll insist on there being a refreshing and an updating, and we'll come up with some time frames with regards to that as we move this along. But we want to advance this beyond our current capacity of non-government organizations. That, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to do. And it's designed to provide situational awareness so that as these different companies, maybe, as I pointed out before, are working and there's a storm coming, we can provide them with information. Hospitals, for example, are expected through their emergency managers working in conjunction with not only the health department but emergency services. We have that open chain of communication and that dialogue that takes place on a regular basis. They're expected to cancel elective surgeries. They're expected to get into that hunkered down, we're going to have a special event, snowstorm, whatever it happens to be, and adapt appropriately. And to make sure that they have resources, personnel are resources, that they have them in that particular facility, and that they've made arrangements to sustain that through a couple of days. So it's an ongoing dialogue. Our overall goal with regards to this, and here's an example of, will this automatically play, Sarah? Or? So this is just to give you an idea of the portal that'll be out there. That'll be a survey where companies can put not only their organizational name, the address, key information, contact person, that would be the person that would be their 24/7 contact. And then from that point on, other than contact information, it's, you know, what does your organization do? And then the more descriptive you are with regards to that, and basically selling your case that you're essential because we produce particular products, or there are certain facilities here in Western New York and in Erie County that, quite frankly, if they lost power and they were shut down for an extended period of time, a day and a half, they would have to completely retool as a result of the product that's in the lines. And so we want to be able to avoid that, but this has to be a two-way dialogue, because the example we use all the time, a road that's closed is a road that's closed. So if you are an essential person and the 219 is shut down, it doesn't really matter what it says on your badge or on your authorization. If the road is closed, it's closed. So we need to work with these organizations through the Emergency Operations Center, hospitals and others, to give them an idea as to what is the easiest path to that particular facility. And in the past, we've actually worked with coordinating rides from municipal areas into those facilities. So it's not just as simple as saying you have permission to travel, it's permission to travel where, and having that communication to push the information out directly to them as to what is the best path to get to wherever we need to go. So it's an ongoing project. The big takeaway of this is communications, collaboration, cooperation. This is the first step to get that communication out there. Who have we missed? And gather that, put it into a format where now we have a better situational awareness, and we have multiple tools at the emergency services level that we can actually roster these businesses, where we can push notifications instantly to them with regards to not only what is on the horizon, what's the current situation, and then the post situation too, to gather that feedback to make things more efficient, to push this beyond where pretty much everybody has been, which is that tier 1.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to note, I should have said this early on and I forgot, we normally would have an interpreter for those who are hearing disabled. Unfortunately, we cannot today. We tried to get one. There were just none available because of holiday vacations and illnesses, so I apologize to those in the disability community. One of the things that we think is very important for employers that are essential and have employees that are required to travel during these situations is they need to have ID that shows, like mine does, emergency travel authorized. Because, and we've said this before, including with regards to county employees, are like, well, I'm a county employee. Am I emergency personnel? And I've said, well, the easiest way to determine is look at the back of your badge. And if you don't have emergency travel authorized, you're not essential personnel. So our account clerks that work in various departments and things like that, no. But if the same thing goes for our emergency personnel, they all have this, because in case they do get stopped by a police officer, or in some situations that we've seen in the past, such as the 2014 snowstorm and last year, the National Guard, they will not let people through. And if you have the emergency authorized travel badge, they will. Otherwise, you're at risk of being sent the other direction or getting a fine. So we think it's important that all employers that are essential give their employees an ID that identifies them as being essential. Once again, as I said, there's varying situations. A doctor in the doctor's primary care office is not essential. The doctor himself or herself might be essential if they have to travel to the hospital for an emergency surgery. So it's going to vary in the situation. But what we want people to understand is we're presenting this because we've gotten lots of questions of who's essential, who's not. And in the vast majority of those that reach out, they truthfully are non-essential. They just want a reason to be able to stay open in these situations. They're non-essential. But there are some we understand that probably do have reasons. You talked about the retooling. That was exactly Bethlehem Steel, when it was up and running, they could not shut down their lines because it would have destroyed the equipment with regards to the steel making process. So there were essential individuals who had to be at Bethlehem Steel, regardless of how long, even during the blizzard of '77. They were still making steel because they had no choice. Because if they shut down, they actually would have destroyed and damaged their lines. So there are some employers in this area who are probably like that as well. We want to hear from them. And we want people to understand that when state of emergency issued, it means things are really bad. When we're in the room determining whether a state of emergency issued, I generally talk to and say, is it appropriate? And when we come to the conclusion that it is, it's not because we want to exercise power. It's because it is life-threatening circumstances out there. And as we saw last year in the blizzard, it got so bad that no one could respond because they could not see where they were going, even in the best type of equipment and the best trained personnel. So you shouldn't be on the road trying to drive somewhere in that situation. And we actually called folks who were trying to come in or were scheduled to come in and say, stay home. We can't risk having you come in this situation because it's so dangerous. And we want people to understand that when we issue a state of emergency and a driving ban, it is because conditions are so bad, you're putting yourself and anybody else who might have to come and try to rescue you at risk, and we just don't want that. We want to be able to open up the community as quickly as possible, and that requires people to hunker down for a little bit, which leads to one more final thing before I open up for questions. Now is the perfect time to make certain that you have a few extra days of canned food and things like that in your house, and you have a manual can opener. Because if you have an electric opener, and you got a bunch of cans sitting there and you lose your power, it's not going to do you much of any good. So now is the time before any major storm hits, and we're worried we're going to get one. Weather's been warm, the lake's still warm. I think anybody who's lived here in a long time knows these are conditions that are very ripe for a very strong lake effect storm. So we're worried we might get one in January or late December. So now's the time to ensure you have as much food as you possibly can get, including canned goods, that you can eat in case you're locked into your house for 2 or 3 days. You should also have at least a week's, preferably 2 weeks, worth of prescriptions on hand. We know one of the biggest problems we had in the blizzard with calls to our 858 snow number were individuals who ran out of prescriptions that were needed for their life. And we could not get those prescriptions to them immediately, but we would send the sheriff's office to come and take individuals who needed dialysis to dialysis, but deliver prescriptions to others. So if you make certain as you're going through the winter months, you always have at least 2 weeks worth of prescriptions on hand if you have a health issue that requires you to have those prescriptions to stay alive. So it's very important that people be prepared as well. We talk a lot about winter preparedness, emergency preparedness kits we've been giving out all year. People can put together their own emergency preparedness kits. I'm just going to go back one. Go to the www.erie.gov/DHSES, and you'll find the information there. You'll also find the information on our health department site about what you should have in your emergency kit, what you should have in your car. You should have a blanket. You should have gloves. You should have a hat. You should have a small snow shovel to help you get out. You should have kitty litter. People wonder why you get kitty litter. It's like it actually helps you get traction if you get stuck in an icy road. You should have these things, and you can find the full list at our Department of Homeland Security's Emergency Services as well as Department of Health sites, because it is incumbent upon everyone. When it comes to an emergency situation, we need everyone to do their part. And for many people, your part is just staying at home, staying at work. Even if you don't want to be stuck at your work location, it's better to be stuck at work than to try to go out into the teeth of the storm and have the worst case happen. So with that, we'll open up to any questions. Braden.
Is the website up and
Yes.
operational right
The
now? And is it
Yeah.
is it recommended that every company does it, even though they're
No, if you're not, if you are not essential and you know you're not essential, you shouldn't do it. It's for those that are kind of, they have something aspect about it that might be essential. Like, we're not telling the utilities, we're not telling those types of the hospitals, nursing homes, adult care facilities that have 24-hour staff that have to be on hand. We're not asking them to send in the information because we know they're essential. It's these ones that are kind of quasi. And I want to note, it was on the slide, but Dan, I don't think mentioned it, is there were a lot of businesses that were listed as essential during the COVID-19 pandemic. Lumber yards, hardware stores, they're not essential in the middle of a snowstorm. So we want people to understand, and this is what we talk about, who's in the business that is essential for one thing might not be essential for another. The worst case scenario is what happened with the train derailment and explosion in Ohio. We've had train derailments here. That's always a big concern because we've had oil trains and other things pass through our region. If we had to issue a state of emergency, that might be a totally different type of state of emergency because we might have to evacuate entire blocks. And then you not only are keeping people out, but you're actually shutting down maybe an entire community where the next one, it's normal business. So it's going to vary in each situation. But what we're asking is for the businesses that are kind of quasi, that they have something associated with them that is essential, we know about it. And I'll give you a good example for you sitting in the room, media. Now, reporters aren't going to hear this. You're not necessarily essential driving around, but your engineers at the studios are. Your engineers at the radio station are, because we want to keep you on the air. But we don't want, truthfully, the reporters and everybody driving around our community in a horrible storm. And we showed last year it didn't need to happen. We were able to do remote press conferences where we were at the Emergency Operations Center and I was staring at one camera, same camera that's straight ahead. And that was it, I believe. And then we were able to patch everybody in and do a Zoom press conference because it was so unsafe for anybody to be on the road. So there are situations where even those that might feel like, hey, I need to be out there, shouldn't be, but we know you need to get your engineers back and forth. So there are ways in which you can contact us, and that's why we ask for the portal too, is so we have contact information, so that if in this situation comes up, we know how to contact you, you know how to contact us.
How do you plan to enforce this and ensure that only drivers who have been approved through this portal are on the road?
It's up to the local law enforcement to actually do the enforcement, and we have seen them do that in the past when necessary. What I think the worst case scenario often happens is a driving ban is still in effect, but weather's a little better. And then everyone wants to get out. And it just clogs up our ability to handle the response. I remember, I think it was the November storm, and we were talking about, for those of you who were there, the Camaro that was trying to drive up the hill in the middle of a driving ban that was blocking our ability to, because it kept on going up the hill and get stuck, and we finally had to go up there and tow it out of there. And the person said, well, I'm essential. I'm like, and they weren't, and it turns out, why are you even driving a Camaro at this point? So it's I think it's important that we get the information out, and then we hear back from others.
Yeah, so if I could add to that, ideally, once we get some additional information, we already know where the bread and butter is. So we're trying to expand that now and get a better understanding of it. So ideally, what we will do is we'll take that data into our emergency management software, DLAN, Disaster Land, and we will then have that there for other municipalities, because every one of them has access to Disaster Land. So they would then be able to, if they had any questions at all, obviously what they've done in the past is they've notified us directly at the Emergency Operations Center. We have emergency support functions that deal with transportation-related issues. But this would be the cleanest way, once we get to that point, for a town or a village or a city to be able to look at that resource within that emergency management tool and see what the listed companies are, and then beyond that, who those employees are. This is not an intent to, if you have, as I said, 100 employees, that all 100 employees are going to be deemed essential. It's an opportunity for companies that have contacted us in the past and said we really needed to travel, to make that justification so that we can all work together. But additionally to that, to make that justification of who are the employees that need to keep the lights on, not the employees that are going to have to continue to work to turn out the widgets. So it's an evolution. This is a very, us pushing forward on this, if you talk to my staff, this has been a challenge. But it's something that we've felt that we need to do. We're going to focus on it. It's going to bring other county departments in too to help us with that. But again, that's our ultimate goal, is to expand that list based on information that's coming from these businesses, so that we can be more efficient and more resilient and get things back to normal quicker.
As far as local law enforcement enforcing that, would that look like a fine at this time? Do you know what that would be?
It's a Class B misdemeanor, and it could be subject up to a $500 fine and theoretically jail time. I don't think we're talking about jail time for anybody, but if you have no reason to be on the road, why would you risk a ticket? That could be substantial.
Do you think a $500 fine is enough to keep people off the roads?
I would think so. If they feel like they're going to go take a joyride and go to somebody's house and then get pulled over and get a ticket for a potential $500 fine, that should be enough. I'm going to remind everybody, our goal is to keep as much vehicular traffic off the roads during these situations. And we do that preemptively too. One of the things that worked well last year, we get critique for the blizzard, but we and I had conversations with the School Superintendents Association about being open on the 23rd. They all were officially taking off on the 24th, but most of the districts were open on the 23rd. And we explained the situation, and we said we don't really know. At that point, I think it was on the 22nd when the Weather Service finally issued the blizzard warning for the next day. And at that point, I talked to the superintendents and said, you guys got to close. Men and women have to make the determination to close for the 23rd, because we don't want all these students in school and then try to have to bus them home. And they all made the decision, which was smart, to close. And for those of you who remember, we had a press conference in this room, I think on the 22nd, and I implored businesses to close, because I really can't order closure of businesses, except in a state of emergency. I theoretically could, but I don't want to do that. But we implored them, please close. If you don't need to be open, don't be open. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. It could be really bad. And in some parts of Erie County, we were expecting it to be very bad. Southern Erie County, it wasn't. It was much worse in the metro region. So it's incumbent upon businesses and individuals to be smart, to make smart decisions about going out into those situations. And law enforcement, their primary responsibility is responding to issues of critical importance. They do not want to be pulling over people and writing tickets, but they have when it's been necessary. And I just ask people to use common sense.
Executive, to follow up with Andy's question, what about the selfish business owners that say, we need to make money, we need to stay open? What legal parameters do you have? We got calls during the blizzard that people went to work.
I mean, first off, you cannot make an employee violate a travel ban. You cannot make them. If you try to punish them by terminating them or suspending them, it's actually a violation of the law. So it's important for people to understand in a situation like that, the life of the individual matters more than the business making some money. I mean, theoretically, I just said it, I could order the business closed. I don't want to do that. But I would hope that the business owners would use common sense, that they realize the life of my employees is more important than me being open today. I know there's probably a business owner or two who doesn't feel like that. They feel like their profit and their bottom line is more important than some of their employees. But what we would really hope is that the business owners understand that if we're issuing a driving ban, it's for a legitimate reason. As the rules stated, it's to protect life and to bring the emergency under control by opening up roads or restoring services as quickly as possible. Normally we have power outages, it's due to ice storms and things like that, and we might not necessarily need a driving ban in place for them to restore services. But in this situation, as of the last blizzard, we needed it because it was so bad that they needed to have tow trucks to move vehicles and then high lifts to come in and dig basically a road, a passageway to these power substations that had froze. And every vehicle that's in the way is just delaying that ability to respond and to restore services as quickly as possible. So, I mean, I look at this as I hope I don't ever have to issue another state of emergency again. If I never have to issue a state of emergency for the remainder of this term and in the next 4 years, that's a good sign because that means we have not had bad snowstorms, we haven't had anything bad happen. Are the odds of that good, that we're never going to issue a state of emergency? No, because in every term I've had to issue a state of emergency in a driving ban for some bad weather at one point. The first, in 13 we had a blizzard, 14 we had a blizzard, then we had the November snowstorm, 15 we had a blizzard. We had a few good years there. We actually got lucky for a few years, but then it all came back again last year. So I'm just hoping that business owners use common sense and their employees know as well. They cannot be ordered to go to work in that situation. If someone is an essential employee, it's a little different situation because I'll give you an example of that at the hospital, but even the hospital employees knew. They tried to get to work, they couldn't. So eventually we had to find a way to shift individuals in and out of the hospitals. Nursing homes are a very similar situation. They don't need as many people as a hospital, but they have to have staff on hand. Dialysis centers. One of the biggest things we've always done in these snowstorms is pick up individuals, basically put them in a sled, and the sheriff's office does that, so they can transport them to the vehicle, take them to the vehicle to a dialysis center. So there's things that have to stay open. There's other things. Yeah, you may have a hankering for Pizza Hut or Little Caesars or Lenova, but they really don't have to be open. Now I'm going to get a call from all the people associated who like pizza.
A question though for you, and Dan, you could pitch into this as well, but will this coming winter, if we do have a lake effect storm or something that may look at you to consider the travel ban, will the hours of that, what have we learned from the blizzard? Coming home that night, people passed away in their cars coming back from work. Have the hours of when you would issue that, have you become more sensitive or not sensitive is the right word, but more precautionary, I should say, to do it earlier? Has that come into play from what we've learned?
It does. We also have to have people exercise common sense. We know the one young woman who died was actually in a safe location, and she decided hours after the travel ban was issued. Then we also know the other issue, the one woman who died, who went out on the 24th to go get her food for Christmas dinner. when everything was closed. So we also need people to exercise caution. We certainly take it into account, but we need to also listen to our friends that are in the weather service who aren't always 100% correct, and we have to make the best guess of it.
Yeah, and I would say that those discussions are never made in a vacuum. We had that discussion during and before many of our previous storms. So, yeah, I mean, we do need to focus on that. I think you will see a lot of municipalities being a little bit more proactive. You know, there was a travel ban, but it was actually a travel ban that was a direct result of the county executive stepping up and doing that. Any one of the municipalities could have done that as well. You know, timing is an issue, so yeah, maybe in the future, but that's not a discussion that's just had by one person, and a decision, I should say this, by one person. So, yeah, I think human nature would dictate that we'll be a little bit more cognizant, maybe err on the side of caution a little bit more. But the decision that was made previously was made based on a number of factors, and it was the right decision.
I can remember one storm in particular where we were not expecting a blizzard warning to be issued. We were expecting heavy snow, and it was a winter storm warning, and we were at the Emergency Operations Center, and then all heck started breaking out. And it went from, well, this is manageable, to, literally in a half hour, to this is completely unmanageable. I'm going to have to issue a state of emergency and a driving ban and get people off the roads. And it wasn't, we weren't warned there was going to be a blizzard. We were warned there was going to be a significant snowfall. So things change. And I'll give you an example that also sometimes what we expect just isn't true, and that's the blizzard in December. I issued a state of emergency and a travel ban for all of Erie County because we expected the early part of that storm, based on the forecast that we had, to hit the metro area, but also southern Erie County. In the end, I was getting calls within 2 or 3 hours from southern Erie County saying, why is there a travel ban? We're not getting anywhere near the snow. So we have to adjust, got to adjust on the fly. And so we did that. We actually started pulling back the travel ban locations based on where the storm was hitting and where it wasn't. And that's just something that happens all the time. Harold, do you have a question?
These emergency travel badges that you alluded to earlier, are they issued by the county, or are they
No.
going to be issued by the employer?
No, they should be issued by the employer.
How would you know whether these are official? I mean,
We trust the employers and the employees to be providing, we know what our department looks like, we know what the other departments of public works, we know what the general badge. I mean, we're trying to do everything possible. We don't want to be in a situation where we're issuing badges for everybody in Erie County. It just would not be feasible, would not be practical. So you have to rely on the employer to be doing it this honestly, as well as the employee. Is it possible that someone would fake a badge? Yeah. I mean, anything's possible. We've seen it all.
Can I just,
Let me go, there's Nate.
you mentioned multiple generational storms in your tenure. We've had these conversations before, during, and after pretty much every single one of them. From a communication to the public standpoint, what's frustrating and what's being done at the county level to really make sure communication's crystal clear? I know you're working with U of Albany in terms of a communication aspect of future storms.
One of the things is we're also working with our partners that in the language access area to ensure that individuals who do not speak English as their primary language get information out as well. We do know that a few of the individuals who died during the blizzard did not have English as their primary language and may not have understood the severity of the storm, even though the information had been out there for days. I mean, we count on so many sources. We count on the media. We count on social media. We count on all the other resources that are out there to get information. One of the things that if the situation arose again is we would activate the iPause system, which would then send a message to every single cell phone in that area, very similar to like an Amber Alert, so that no one who has a cell phone could say, I didn't know about this. We've generally thought that those would be for immediate life-threatening, like a tornado, but now we realize even in situations where a blizzard warning is issuing, a blizzard has happened, a travel ban is in effect, people still make decisions that are costly to them by going out, and maybe they didn't feel it was that bad. So we want to ensure that we use every mechanism possible.
Yeah, so, yeah, iPause is a valuable tool to be able to do that, but we also discovered that it's more than just social media, radio and television stations. There were individuals that were missed, as the county exec noted, that, felt that they were missed because English is a second language. So, throughout the course of the last 8 months, all departments in county government have worked very closely. Social services, mental health. The deputy county executive has led a tremendous initiative with a number of non-government organizations out there to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we work, because they're doing things, we're doing things, other agencies maybe are a part of that process too. But, what really needs to be done is we all need to be on the same page and working, pushing not only information, but also whatever is required of that recovery. iPause is critical because the people who would tend to be missed are the people that are maybe crossing over on 90 from Erie, Pennsylvania into New York State, or coming through the area, coming in from Canada or wherever. They're not from here. They might not even be staying here, but they're impacted by that. They don't stop to watch the local news. They probably don't even have local Twitter feeds. So it's just a matter of pulling all that information together, coming up with social media messaging that actually gets that message across is what we're working with the University of Albany on. I mean, basically, if you go out, you will die. I mean, the messages need to be very crisp, very clear, leaving very little, leaving no doubt that if you go outside, this is going to be detrimental to your health. So those are the type of things we've been working on for quite some time now, and have new resources and tools to do that.
The language matters. I think we who were here last year all know that it was called a generational storm. What we found out afterwards is nobody knew what the heck that meant. Well, how could it be a generational storm when just 3-4 weeks ago you had this 7-foot storm that hit Orchard Park in Hamburg, 7 feet of snow? Is it worse than that? And then we were hearing from the weather, no, we're not going to have anywhere near that much snow. So and you hearken back, was it a generational storm? Yes, if you compare it to the blizzard of '77 and everything that happened since then. But as Dan said, language to the effect of you will die. You can die. It's extreme, but it may send the message that's necessary that do not go outside. Seek immediate shelter, no matter where you are. Don't travel any further. You can die. That hopefully will send a message to people, I shouldn't get on the road. And then one other thing you talked about, you'll hear, and you've heard from our deputy county executive at some stuff, is COADs, community organizations assisting in disasters. It's like getting information out to them. It's not like we want them, the community organizations, to be getting out on the roads, but they have their pockets, a level of communication. So the Burmese Association, we can contact them and they can immediately send the information out to the Burmese Association and Karens, including individuals who don't speak English. Bangladeshis, same thing. So we want those organizations to be a conduit of information to their members who may not understand a single word I'm saying.
Just for some clarification, based on my newsroom chat that's going on right now. So media is not essential.
Well, technically under the standard associated by the state, it's not, because it is, let me go back here. Yes. The establishment of curfew and prohibition and control of pedestrian and vehicular traffic except essential emergency vehicles and personnel. Technically under the statute, unless you're immediately responding, you're not. But we understand that there's some variables associated with that.
So basically be smart.
Yes.
But you're still, but also you're going to be streaming press conferences like you
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we want to get information out to the public, so we want to use the media. We don't need news trucks driving all over saying, there's a snowstorm here, and then getting stuck. I've talked to reporters who will say it off the record. It's kind of funny because it's the opposite way. And they're like, the last thing I want to be doing is driving out in the Boston Hills during a snowstorm. I've had our truck go off the road and stuff like that, but they want us out there. So I just want the media and the news directors and the assignment editors to understand, you don't need to send the people out into the snow because they know it's snowing. Everyone knows it's snowing, and you're only putting your reporters and your cameramen and women in harm's way. But we understand that there are times in which you need to be at the site to report.
Private conversation between you and me, Mark. You weren't supposed to share.
You're not the only one who said that, Nate. Not that. Actually, I could go through every station and identify someone who said that from the station. And the irony is, I think usually the news directors and the other ones are safe at home because they can't get to their stations.
You worked with us.
You hear a lot in this job. Let's just say that. You learn a lot. All right, everyone. Hopefully we do not have to issue a state of emergency this year. We've been lucky so far, even though we had that big snowstorm that dropped 14 inches that was unexpected in the metro area.
Well, that's pretty bold with 2 weeks left.
Yeah. Well, that's true,
How
this
about
year.
next year?
Oh, well, this travel season, let's say. But let's hope it's all a good weather, and this is just a precaution to ensure that we are prepared and everyone's prepared. And the best thing you can all do is just prepare. Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.